But I have Mr. Dawud Mohammed here, who almost gave me a stroke because I kept we work together, but we don't see each other. I'm on the third floor, he's on the first floor, and this is probably the first time I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks. But because we are all busy, so I wasn't really quite sure if we're still going to be able to make it. Did he remember? So I'm glad you're here, Mr. Mohammed. I really appreciate it. And I think our friends here have a lot to learn from you and from the inspiring stories that you always share with us. Mr. Dawud Mohammed works at Wayne County Community College District, and I don't know how long he's been working there. So I guess he will tell you that when he comes in. I can just tell you that he's an awesome, awesome speaker. So on that note, Mr. Mohammed.
Good evening. Well, I'm very happy to be here. I wasn't sure of what the format would be, how things go. I'm hoping that whatever it is I share is of benefit to the listener. I don't like to waste words. I like to share and hope that whatever it is I share finds a resting place somewhere in your consciousness and that you find it beneficial. And I won't be long, because I have two things that I know I'm working against. That's one, the time of day. If you've already had a long day, there's only so much energy you can give to a talk. And unfortunately, though this may be a very unique crowd, folks' attention spans aren't what they used to be. And I like to respect both time, and sometimes brevity is a gift. And it doesn't take a lot when minds are singularly focused. What I'd like to share with you is a very simple principle, and it's encapsulated in one thing, and that is, you've done it already. I'll say that once more. You've done it already. Now, having said that, because I'm going to end the way I started. That's really the end of my talk right there. You've done it already. Got it? I like a response when I'm talking. You can say, what's the subject? You've done it already. But okay, that's kind of impersonal. I'm a singular speaker speaking to a group, so I can say you've done it already. But now you have to personalize it. So what's the subject? You've got it. So you quick learners. It doesn't take a long time. Now the question is, what have I done? And I'll put it to you like this. Every soul that occupies a seat or standing in this room, you have done and have achieved the improbable and virtually the impossible. The only reason we can't say impossible is because you're here. Now let me explain myself. How do you justify your existence on this big blue marble spinning at 1,037 1/3 miles per hour? It weighs about 6 sextillion tons. That's like 6 with 21 zeros behind it. Yet as heavy as it is, it's spinning at such a rapid speed because the light of the sun strikes it. And that gives it movement. There's nobody blowing on it. There's not a bunch of people pushing on it. An object this heavy is being moved by whatever the quality of the light of the sun has to move the object, and it's the fastest vehicle you've ever ridden in your life. And you've never felt a pothole. True? It's a pretty good vehicle. Whatever Porsche, Mercedes, or whatever else you say you like to buy, just know that there hasn't been an engineer yet that can engineer a vehicle faster than this planet. And there's yet to be a vehicle, even though they have Tesla motors and they have electric cars, all of that is nice. There's no vehicle that's moving on solar energy like this one. So that's a pretty impressive vehicle. You've been riding in it, and you've made a few revolutions around the sun in it. And however old you are is how many revolutions you've made around the sun based upon calculations on the Gregorian calendar of 12 months and 365 days, blah, blah, blah. You already know all of that. So, that being said, what have you done? Well, let's go back to this statement. How do you justify your existence on this wonderful vehicle making these revolutions around the sun. Now, I like to look at things in nature. I like to look at things in the human body. I like to look at just the world around us. That fascinates me. And in this fascinating reality that we live in, I like to sometimes draw an analogy here, a metaphor there. Maybe we can grab a spiritual nugget here or there. I don't like to speak with limitation. I don't have a linear way that I address things, so it might be a little spontaneous. We might bounce here or there, but don't worry, we'll stay in the same place. Now, the Earth, as it spins at 1,037 1/3 miles per hour, in its fixed rotation, that gives us night and day. Am I correct? Night and day. But the revolution it makes around the sun, that gives us our months and our years, correct? Okay. We know that we get our seasons not based upon how close the Earth is to the sun, but the angle of the Earth to the sun as it makes its elliptical revolution around the sun. Depending on the angle determines the degree of sunlight and the intensity of that sunlight, and ultimately what you call winter and summer and so on. Correct? Okay. Have you ever had winter in your life? Have you? Winter. Have you experienced winter? And I'm not talking about the season where you put on your coat. I'm talking about conditions that were pretty cold and not very productive conditions. Have you been through winter and didn't have the right coat? And after you've been through a few winters, you learn which coat to wear. Loss in friendship, cruel treatment, loss of a job, stumbling academically or professionally. You ever had that winter before? Can get pretty cold, can't it? You remember the spring of your life, when everything just seems so colorful and wonderful and I'm in love. Have you experienced spring? Have you experienced summer in your life? And it's wonderful at times, but sometimes it's a little too much, huh? And I'm sure you've experienced autumn or the fall. It's not too hot, not too cold. Days seem to be getting shorter. Doesn't seem to be enough time, but you're enjoying the fruits of whatever labor and energy you've put into a project, objective, and so on. Correct? All of us have had that journey. Well, how does one justify his or her existence? You justify your existence by realizing the importance of reaching the highest manifestation of the perfect reality called you. You've heard people say nobody's perfect. I beg to differ. I am perfectly Dawud Muhammad. There's not another one that can be this one. I am perfectly him. And you can't outdo me in being me. Now, you can outdo me in some stuff, but being me, you can't touch this. And the same is true of everyone in this room. You are perfectly who you are, but you haven't reached, oftentimes most of us haven't reached the perfected state of what that is. In other words, everyone in here was born to do something perfect, and that something is you're born to do the greatest thing you can do with the package you're given. Not simply the external package, but the package you were given based upon how you came up in life. Whether you consider it tragic or wonderful and all sugar and ice cream and nothing sour. However you see your life, that's part of your package. Your social package, your emotional package, your environmental package, all of that. Ultimately, who and what you are is determined by action and motion, not based on what books you get at the store in the self-help section. Though those books can be valuable, but ultimately, it'll be determined by the actions you take as you define yourself in a new way every day, or at least you have the potential to. I would warn you, though, be careful and make sure you can distinguish between a habit and an addiction. They are very similar. If you do something habitually long enough, to change you or to move you away from that habit is almost like trying to take you off of crack or heroin. Because habits is where we find our comfort zone. And one of the greatest drugs to overcome is comfort, because we are constantly seeking comfort from the day we come forth from the womb of our mothers. And there's nothing wrong with seeking comfort, but be clear that if you look for ultimate comfort, in other words, you're looking for that moment of just straight, complete, total, and maximum comfort, well, that could be the end of your life there. Because comfort is not a permanent state. It is a driving condition. A lot of people say, well, you know, no pain, no gain. Yeah, that's true. No pain, no gain. But I have something else I want you to consider. No pleasure, no enthusiastic movement toward goals and going beyond those goals. There must be pleasure in life. I'm not speaking in the hedonistic sense, even though I know I'm in the ultra lounge. But I'm speaking in a deeper sense. We are driven more by pleasure than pain, and sometimes you think that you have to experience pain in areas where you really don't have to. You just choose to, and then you want to be looked at as the martyr because you live such a painful life, and people be putting so much on me, and there's so much, my whole family's depending on me, and I have to do everything right, and you know, it's just so much pressure because you're choosing to shoulder it. There's some stuff you're not supposed to shoulder because, excuse me, I'm going to depart from proper language and say to you, it ain't yours. It ain't. It ain't yours. What's yours to carry, you can carry well. There are times where it's uncomfortable, there's times where it's not. Now, how do you justify your existence on this earth? By manifesting your gifts, your talents, your creativity, by achieving objectives and goals through your creativity and gifts without limitation. Well, we all have limits, yeah, we do, but a lot of times what we think is a limit is not, except in this sense. There is a law for everything in the universe. And there are restrictions, but those restrictions are not oppressive restrictions. Those restrictions are necessary for you to develop in various stages until you reach your greatest possible existence. And you're supposed to experience that. Now, I won't get into a debate with you in terms of how you look at life religiously. I've often been asked to speak at funerals. And I find it interesting. I don't care what your religion is, whether you're Muslim, Christian, Buddhist. I find it interesting at funerals, folks always know the destination of the deceased, if you believe like that. I mean, people speak with great, I know so-and-so is up in heaven looking down on me. How do you know that? Yeah, I mean, people speak with, and nobody bothers it because, of course, you had a funeral, so you be bearing witness, y'all. Yeah. How do you know? You don't know that. Whatever your belief is. So I never, when I'm asked to speak, I never assign where that person is in relationship to the ultimate place people believe a person should be if they believe them to be good. But I will say this. The heaven and hell of life itself are the conditions you should focus on. And I'm going to share with you the best possible religion. The best religion is, his name is Dawud Muhammad. I know what he's going to say. Do you? The best religion is treat people like you want to be treated. That's the best religion. And you'll find that in all the world's religions. You'll find that in all the great philosophical beliefs amongst the people. All of the great philosophers, all of them talked about the same thing. Treat others as you'd like to be treated. So can we look at that as a fundamental rule? No matter what your religion, treat people like you want to be treated. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to give it to you in kind, but your conscience will be clear because you treat people like you want to be treated. How many of you agree with that? You agree? Good, 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 good. All right. In agreement with that, if that's true, then let's look at growth. If in fact you're in an environment where you want to grow, or you want to be in an environment where you want to thrive, and there's someone who might be responsible for helping to nurture you into your growth, treat people like you want to be treated. Meaning, what kind of treatment would you expect out of somebody responsible for helping you to grow? What kind of treatment? Think about that for a minute, because not all treatment is the kind of treatment you like. A really good teacher, I promise you, the teacher you remember most is the teacher that challenged you the most and did not let you sit in your comfort zone. In fact, the best teachers understand education in its deeper sense. The word education comes from a Latin word, educere. It literally means to guide or to lead out. In other words, education is not the information you put in somebody's head. Education is to identify the unique gifts and talents of your pupil and challenge your pupil with external information to tap into their internal greatness and activate that by challenging them intellectually to be critical thinkers. That's education. That other stuff is just rote learning so you can be a nice robot and, you know, get what robots get. Oiled with a check, and you don't think much, you just stay in line. But I don't think I'm speaking to those kind of folk, right? I didn't think so. Well, to justify your existence, there are three things you must overcome. Three critical things you must overcome. You must overcome incredible odds against you. When I say incredible odds against you, I'm going to give you a number, and then I'll explain the number later. I'd say the odds are like approximately 350 million to 1. Is that some pretty steep odds? 350 million to 1. Would you put some money on the table for that? 350 million to 1. There's no casino that would, you know, worry about you if you tried to bet against the house on that. But look, so you must overcome incredible odds. What's the first principle? Must overcome incredible odds against you. My point is, you've already done that. I told you already did it. You said you already, you said, what did you say earlier? You personalized. What did you say? I've already done it. And you've already done that. Next great principle in overcoming to justify your existence on this wonderful planet and out in the universe, because some of you got enough genius where you might move beyond the planet. But next principle you must embrace and understand is you must overcome an environment that's so hostile it's diametrically opposed to your existence. I'm talking about an environment where your existence is not calculated into the environment. In fact, everything in the environment says you're not supposed to be here. Now remember, you said earlier that you what? You've done it already. So that's another thing that you've done. Then lastly, you must make an upward motion toward your goal while there is a downward force, like gravity, pushing you away from the goal you're trying to reach. So the force of gravity, hostile environment, and incredible odds against you. And your answer to what I've just said is, Dawud Muhammad, it's not impossible. Okay, when'd you do it? Somebody said it, not at birth, but at conception. At one time, and this is always a profound reflection for me, at one time, you, the singular individual, born to be perfectly you, you were potentially you, but in two parts. There was mom and there was dad. Now, mom might have been in Detroit, dad might have been in Lagos. Mom might have been in Alabama, dad might have been in LA. But at some point, there was an encounter between mom and dad. And when that encounter took place, mom and dad really liked each other a lot. And so there was a point where there was physical intimacy, and in that physical encounter, there was 350 million on average life seeds expended from your father, introduced into the birth canal of your mother, and as soon as those seeds reached that birth canal, it was trouble. Because though there was a big army of 350 million, though that was true, most of them died before they even reached the cervix. Most of them did, because the environment was that hostile. And then those that made it to the cervical opening started making their way through the uterus up to the fallopian tubes, and more of them were lost because the environment was hostile. It's an acidic environment, and it's killing off those seeds. By the time those seeds make its way to that egg to potentially fertilize, it's only a few dozen now. We're talking about down from 350 million to a few dozen. And out of that few dozen, all of them penetrate the outer part of the egg, but there's one that reaches the core, and when that happens, a chemical reaction takes place where it seals the egg, and any of the eggs trapped in, any of the sperm trapped in between, sorry, they're out of there. And then it seals off where no other sperm can penetrate that egg, and cell generation starts, and there's genetic material from mama, genetic material from dad, and after 9 months, a new life comes into being. So what did you do? You were born. And your birth is proof of you overcoming incredible odds, hostile environment, odds against you, and the downward force of gravity toward your upward goal. Do you know when those seeds are on their way up toward the egg, that there are these like little finger-like things that are forcing the egg down toward the sperm, but in pushing the eggs down toward the sperm, it's making it difficult for the sperm to make it up. And so they become more and more agitated in movement. Ultimately, proof that everything worked out is that you're here right now. Now, with that said, once you're born, you got to start over again. But this time, you're doing it in the social environment. You're not going back into your mother's womb, but you're born into a new womb. You're born into stages of development. You start off not knowing much, but over time you learn. You learn through your parents, you learn through your teachers, but more importantly, in your early formative years, you're simply learning through good observation. And you learn some things. Children learn a lot of stuff through trial and error and observation. You try and keep your toddler or your child away from steps, but you don't really teach a child how to go down the steps. The child kind of figures that out on his or her own. Some of them find out the hard way. And you hear that, and you run out and get them. And some of them are very cautious. In fact, they don't do the down thing. They stay away from there. They let mom or dad take them down, but up. They'll do up, only to get stuck halfway. You have to get them. But one thing about children is they observe and they learn. Some of them learn painful lessons. And even walking. Did you know that doctors have said, a lot of people say, my child never even crawled. He just got up and walked. They say it's really healthier that a child crawls for a while because it's developing its coordination. It's activating certain neurotransmitters. Every stage of your growth and development was necessary. Now, the question to ask, I was looking at a documentary, and they were saying how nature is dumb and the birth process is illogical. And I'm like, man, where'd they come from? It's one of the most beautiful things to me. Here it is. Every one of you is like against the odds. 350 million is an average. I've seen it where it says 1 billion may be expended, but only one makes it. Point being made is you've done it already. Now what you have to do is sometimes take a step back and look at where you are in life and just know that if you feel some forces down on you, you're supposed to. If you feel like the environment is hostile, it's supposed to be. If you feel the odds are against you, that's natural. It's not new. It's not based upon the country you're in. It's not based upon your philosophical or political slant. It's based upon that is a natural process that will grow you into the greatest manifestation of who you are if you don't reject it. So you cannot reject struggle. And certainly you cannot reject pain. But here's the question. How did your journey begin? How did your journey begin of seed or sperm on its way to egg? What brought that about? It was a moment, hopefully, I'm sure with great intent, of pleasure. In that moment of pleasure, a process began. Something about pleasure as a driving force. And the greatest pleasure you can get is to have an idea. Think on that idea. Lay out your plans for that idea. Go about reaching and attaining your objective, and when you reach it, there's nothing more pleasurable than to have an idea and to fully manifest that idea, and that idea is not aborted or failed, but it is successful. There's nothing more pleasurable than that. But when we think with limitation, we don't draw on the best and the greatest of who we are. So I'm going to make a few final points. I'm going to wrap this up. Everybody okay? Not putting anybody to sleep? Somebody said not yet. Well, I'm not dancing. I can promise you that. But look, you've heard the term metamorphosis, and the most common reference that people make when they talk about a metamorphosis is when a caterpillar wraps itself in a cocoon, and that over a period of time, it comes from that cocoon a butterfly. Now, interestingly, that caterpillar doesn't look very attractive, no more than when you study the microscopic level of your own procreation. It may not be the prettiest thing, but it brings great beauty at the end of the journey. Well, in studying that butterfly, did you know that that chrysalis or cocoon is actually just like one single strand? And that creature emits that strand from itself based upon the diet it's feeding on, and it produces that strand of silk, and it wraps itself up in it, attaches itself to a branch, and then it goes through that process of metamorphosis. At one point, that caterpillar breaks completely down where it's almost liquid. Then over time, the wings begin to develop and all of the other component parts. Part of the greatest aspect of the moth or the butterfly coming into its own is it must work itself out of its own cocoon. And in doing so, it's developing nervous system, muscles, and whatever necessary to survive on the other side of the cocoon. Now, in a principled kind of symbolic sense, we all are at a place in life, and much of where we are in life isn't simply what people did to us, but how we reacted to what they did, and then the stuff we did after that, which some good, some bad, some rationalizing and trying to justify and all of that, others very good decision making and so on. But your life is your singular thread that you wrap yourself up in. And there are aspects in your growth and your development and in your greatness where you will get help along the way, but there are aspects where nobody can take you out of the cocoon. You got to climb out yourself. And there are times where you may feel that you have been broken down to such a degree that you'll never recover. But oftentimes, all that is the next stage of growth. And it means that you got to let some stuff go so that you can get to the next level. And that means that you can't keep things just like they were. Now, I said something earlier about habits and addictions. Habits are just these frequent patterns we do till we get comfortable. Addictions are something else. That creates a chemical dependency. We've taken something, and that thing has made us to depend on it. And sometimes, in a looser sense, we can become addicted to things and people, and we're looking for a rush from people when we better start generating our own rush. Because ultimately, you're going to wake up with you every day until you're out of here. And don't look for somebody to make you happy. Cultivate some happiness so when you meet that person, thank you, when you meet that person, you can share some happiness. Don't look for a person to validate you. Validate yourself. Put the star on your own ticket. Give yourself your own stamp. And keep moving toward your goal and your objective. So I close saying this to you. You did it already. Just do it again, but do it with a level of consciousness, because that seed had some kind of intelligence that got it to the egg. You have far more intelligence than that, so bring something new to birth. It's expected of you. You were born to do it.